Classroom brings you the untold side of power. From political drama to behind-the-scenes stories of influence and ambition, every video reveals what happens when the world's biggest forces collide. Before we continue, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and tap the notification bell so you never miss the next moment the mainstream media won't show you. The bright lights shimmered across the convention hall as Jasmine Crockett stepped onto the stage of the National Policy Forum. Dressed in a sleek white suit that caught every glint from the overhead lights, she exuded power and precision, the kind that silences even the most restless rooms. The crowd of policy experts, journalists, and dignitaries rose in applause. The moderator introduced her with almost reverent admiration. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, a bold voice of truth in America's political conversation. The applause swelled again. Cameras zoomed in, social media feeds went live. And behind the curtain, Oprah Winfrey watched from the shadows, calm on the outside, but her expression betrayed a mix of surprise and irritation. Her team had just shown her the advance copy of Jasmine's prepared speech, and it wasn't flattering. Winfrey's name appeared several times. Jasmine was about to question her integrity, her influence, and her political involvement, all in front of a national audience. "She's really going to do it," Oprah's assistant whispered. "She's calling you out directly." Oprah took a slow breath, eyes fixed on the monitor. "Then let's see if she's ready for what comes after." The cameras rolled, the audience hushed, and Jasmine began. "America's moral crisis isn't about politics," she said, her voice strong and deliberate. "It's about influence and who we let shape our understanding of truth. Too often, celebrities with massive platforms speak on issues they barely understand. They turn complexity into sound bites. They turn facts into feelings." The crowd leaned forward. "I respect many of these figures," Jasmine continued, "but when you've never held a seat in Congress, never read the fine print of legislation, you have no right to distort the work of those who do." The name Oprah Winfrey flashed briefly on the giant screen behind her. A ripple ran through the audience. Phones lit up. Jasmine wasn't pulling punches. "Just last month," she said, "a prominent media figure accused members of Congress, myself included, of blocking a family relief bill. But what she failed to mention was that the bill contained a clause that quietly removed childcare protections for over 300,000 low-income families." Jasmine paused for effect. "So before anyone lectures me about compassion, let's make sure they've done their homework." The crowd broke into applause. Hashtags began forming in real time. Hashtag Crockett Speaks. Hashtag Accountability Matters. Backstage, Oprah's eyes narrowed. "She's twisting the narrative," Oprah muttered. "That bill wasn't what she's describing." Her aide replied quietly, "We can request a right of reply segment after her speech. You'll have the stage." "Good," Oprah said, "because she's not the only one who can command a crowd." What started as a keynote was turning into a confrontation, one that would soon redefine both women's legacies. Jasmine continued, pacing with rhythm like she'd rehearsed every syllable. "We live in a time when fame can outweigh facts," she said, "when emotion becomes evidence. But that ends tonight, because when you use your platform to mislead the public, intentionally or not, someone has to speak up." The audience murmured in agreement. On social media, clips of Jasmine's statements flooded timelines. Many applauded her boldness. Others waited, wondering if Oprah would respond. A tablet on the counter replayed Jasmine's remarks in real time. "She's brilliant," one of Oprah's producers said cautiously, "but she's wrong about the bill's provisions." Oprah nodded slowly. "She's not the first politician to oversimplify policy to look heroic, but this one's sharper. She knows optics." She glanced in the mirror, adjusting her dark maroon dress. "Fine. If she wants a conversation, she'll get one. Let's see if she's prepared for facts." Her assistant hesitated. "Should I tell the moderator you want to join her on stage after she finishes?" "Don't tell him," Oprah replied, a half smile forming. "Announce it." And just like that, the stage was set, but not the way anyone expected. A congresswoman known for precision had challenged one of America's most respected icons. And that icon wasn't about to stay silent. On stage, Jasmine's tone softened as she neared the end of her speech. "Influence is powerful," she said, "but power without accountability becomes manipulation. I don't care if you're a politician, a journalist, or a billionaire talk show host. When you speak on policy, you'd better bring receipts." Applause thundered through the hall. The moderator stepped forward, clearly moved. "Thank you, Congresswoman Crockett. A powerful message on truth and transparency." But before he could dismiss the session, a familiar voice echoed through the speakers. "If we're talking about truth and transparency," the voice said, "perhaps we should hear both sides." The crowd gasped. Heads turned toward the side entrance as Oprah Winfrey walked out, microphone in hand, her expression calm but firm. The applause shifted from surprise to astonishment. Jasmine's brow lifted slightly, but she didn't flinch. Oprah approached with grace, greeting the moderator. "I think the Congresswoman made some strong points," Oprah said. "But as someone who spent decades interviewing leaders, I've learned that truth often depends on who's telling it." The audience buzzed. The moment had officially transformed from a lecture into a confrontation. The room was electric. Cameras zoomed in. No one expected Oprah to walk onto that stage, least of all Jasmine Crockett, who now stood face to face with the very person she had just called out. Two forces of influence, one built on celebrity, the other on conviction, were about to collide. But what would follow next would flip every expectation upside down. Moderator, nervously. "Well, since we have both of you here, perhaps we can have a brief dialogue." "I'd be happy to," Jasmine replied, composed. "As would I," Oprah said evenly. They sat across from each other, two chairs, one truth, and a million eyes watching. Oprah began. "Congresswoman Crockett, I appreciate your passion, but perhaps before accusing anyone of distortion, we should clarify what the bill actually intended." Jasmine smiled politely. "By all means, I'd love to hear your interpretation." "The bill in question," Oprah said, "was designed to expand tax credits for working parents. Yes, there were amendments, but they didn't remove childcare protections. They shifted the funding model. There's a difference." "A difference that cuts funding from real families," Jasmine replied instantly. "And that's the problem with your narrative, Miss Winfrey. You talk about policy like it's a talk show topic, not a lived reality." The crowd stirred. Someone in the front row whispered, "She's not backing down." Oprah leaned forward slightly. "And that's the problem with politics, Congresswoman. Too often, leaders see disagreement as distortion." Every camera in the hall was rolling. The air felt charged, like history was about to unfold. And in that moment, neither woman knew that this exchange would become one of the most replayed political moments in recent history. As their dialogue continued, the tension sharpened. Crockett, once the critic, now faced a counterattack she didn't expect. Oprah, the icon, had come prepared with data, documents, and a calm charisma honed from decades on television. But Jasmine had something stronger, conviction, and a quiet ace hidden in her notes. Moderator, nervously. "Well, since we have both of you here, perhaps we can have a brief dialogue." "I'd be happy to," Jasmine replied, composed. "As would I," Oprah said evenly. They sat across from each other, two chairs, one truth, and a million eyes watching. Oprah began. "Congresswoman Crockett, I appreciate your passion, but perhaps before accusing anyone of distortion, we should clarify what the bill actually intended." Jasmine smiled politely. "By all means, I'd love to hear your interpretation." "The bill in question," Oprah said, "was designed to expand tax credits for working parents. Yes, there were amendments, but they didn't remove childcare protections. They shifted the funding model. There's a difference." "A difference that cuts funding from real families," Jasmine replied instantly. "And that's the problem with your narrative, Miss Winfrey. You talk about policy like it's a talk show topic, not a lived reality." The crowd stirred. Someone in the front row whispered, "She's not backing down." Oprah leaned forward slightly. "And that's the problem with politics, Congresswoman. Too often, leaders see disagreement as distortion." Every camera in the hall was rolling. The air felt charged, like history was about to unfold. And in that moment, neither woman knew that this exchange would become one of the most replayed political moments in recent history. As their dialogue continued, the tension sharpened. Crockett, once the critic, now faced a counterattack she didn't expect. Oprah, the icon, had come prepared with data, documents, and a calm charisma honed from decades on television. But Jasmine had something stronger: conviction and a quiet ace hidden in her notes. Before we continue with this remarkable exchange, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more powerful stories from the world of politics, power, and influence, stories the mainstream media often overlooks. Because in the next few moments, you'll witness how a congresswoman's courage reshaped the way America sees celebrity and truth. What began as a lecture on truth had now become a live showdown, a billionaire icon versus a rising political star. And millions were watching, both in the hall and across every streaming platform. The cameras zoomed in, the lights brightened, and the air between Jasmine Crockett and Oprah Winfrey felt like the space before a storm. Oprah leaned in, her voice calm but measured. "Congresswoman, I don't speak about policy for headlines. I do it because I care. When I said some leaders have failed us, I wasn't pointing fingers, I was pointing to a pattern." Jasmine smiled, almost sympathetically. "A pattern you helped create, Miss Winfrey, when emotion replaced accuracy." A soft murmur spread through the audience. Even the moderator looked uneasy. "So you're saying," Oprah asked, "that the public shouldn't listen to voices outside politics?" "I'm saying," Jasmine replied, "they should listen to voices that read before they speak." The crowd reacted, gasps, laughter, tension building. Oprah kept her composure. "That's a clever line," she said, smiling faintly, "but condescension doesn't solve division." "And misinformation doesn't solve poverty," Jasmine shot back, her tone sharp but controlled. Every moment was being clipped, subtitled, and uploaded in real time. Hashtag Winfrey versus Crockett was trending, but no one could have predicted what was about to happen next. Jasmine turned toward the moderator. "If we're talking truth," she said, "let's go to the source." She lifted her tablet and projected the bill on the giant screens behind them, sections highlighted in bold red. "Section 43, Jasmine read aloud, removes childcare subsidies for low-income households. Section 119 introduces new tax credits for corporate media holdings." Then she looked directly at Oprah. "That includes your production company, Miss Winfrey." The audience erupted. Some gasped, others clapped, reporters scrambled for screenshots. Oprah blinked, caught momentarily off guard. "That's a misinterpretation," she said, her smile faltering. "I don't personally profit from legislation." "But your company does," Jasmine replied evenly. "And when you tell the American public that a bill helps working families while your business benefits behind the scenes, that's not advocacy, that's influence without accountability." A wave of murmurs swept through the crowd. Cameras zoomed in on Oprah's tightening expression. For years, Oprah Winfrey had interviewed presidents, prime ministers, and moguls, always the one in control. But in that moment, it wasn't a talk show anymore. It was an interrogation, and Jasmine Crockett held the receipts. The moderator tried to step in. "Perhaps we should—" "No," Oprah interrupted, regaining her composure. "Let's finish this. If you're going to make claims, back them up." "Gladly," Jasmine replied. She handed printed documents to journalists in the front row. Public filings, corporate records, all verifiable. The cameras caught every word. Oprah leaned back, her tone now firmer. "You're making dangerous assumptions, Congresswoman." "No assumptions," Jasmine said calmly, "just facts." The audience was dead silent now, every word, every breath amplified by tension. "What I find dangerous," Jasmine continued, "is when someone with your influence shapes millions of opinions and doesn't disclose the full picture." That single sentence sent shockwaves through the hall. It wasn't anger, it wasn't accusation, it was control, calm, deliberate, factual control. And Oprah, for the first time in decades, wasn't a one steering the narrative. The moderator signaled for a break, but the mic stayed live. "Are we really cutting away because I'm showing facts?" Jasmine asked. The crowd reacted instantly, phones up, flashes everywhere. Within minutes, hashtags exploded. Hashtag Crockett Receipts. Hashtag Accountability on Air. Hashtag Winfrey Challenge. Backstage, chaos erupted among Oprah's team. Producers argued. Publicists barked orders. Someone whispered, "She's losing the room." But Oprah herself stayed seated, calm but visibly shaken. When they returned from the brief commercial break, she spoke first. "Before we go further," she said, "I want to acknowledge something important. Congresswoman Crockett raised valid points about legislative details that deserve attention, and for that, I thank her." For a moment, neither woman spoke. The audience's applause tapered into an uneasy silence. Cameras lingered, waiting for the next spark. Jasmine shifted in her chair, her voice steady but low enough to draw everyone in. "You know, Miss Winfrey, I didn't come here to challenge you. I came here to challenge a culture, one that lets stories spread faster than facts." Oprah nodded slowly, leaning forward with her trademark empathy. "And maybe I came here to remind you that stories shape hearts before data ever does, Congresswoman. People feel long before they understand." A small hum of agreement rolled through the crowd. Oprah still had her audience. Jasmine smiled faintly. "You're right, emotion moves people, but unchecked emotion can move them in the wrong direction. That's how misinformation becomes momentum. Or how conviction becomes division," Oprah replied softly. "We've both seen it. Entire communities tearing each other apart, not because of facts, but because of tone." Jasmine nodded, acknowledging the truth in her words. Tone matters, but so does timing. And when someone with your influence speaks, the country listens, sometimes without question. And when someone with your power votes, the country feels it, Oprah countered. "Our roles may differ, but the impact is the same. We both reach millions, Jasmine. We both have responsibility." That use of her first name drew murmurs. The energy in the room shifted from confrontation to candor. "Responsibility," Jasmine repeated. "That's the key word, and it's the one I don't take lightly. I just wish more people in positions of fame treated public influence with the same caution politicians treat the law." "Fame isn't a shield," Oprah said. "Trust me, it's a spotlight that burns. Every mistake I make trends before I can even apologize for it." Jasmine smiled sympathetically. "And every decision I make gets misrepresented before I can explain it." They both laughed lightly, not as rivals, but as women exhausted by expectation. The moderator, sensing the change in tone, relaxed visibly. "Ladies, this conversation is what the forum was meant for. Dialogue, not debate." Oprah glanced at Jasmine, her tone softening. "You remind me of myself 30 years ago," she said. "Fierce, unflinching, unwilling to bend even an inch when I thought I was right." "And were you right?" Jasmine asked with a teasing smile. "Not always," Oprah admitted. "But I learned that sometimes grace wins where grit can't." "Maybe," Jasmine replied. "But grace without grit never changed a system." The audience erupted, this time not with tension but admiration. Two worlds, two philosophies, both finding space to coexist. Then Oprah's expression grew reflective. "When I criticized the bill, I was frustrated, not with you, but with the noise of Washington. People hurting, waiting, watching politicians argue while families slip through cracks. Maybe I oversimplified, but the frustration was real." Jasmine nodded. "And that's fair. I feel that frustration every day. But that's exactly why accuracy matters, because one viral quote can erase months of legislative work." "You're right," Oprah said, looking out at the crowd. "We live in an age where emotion travels faster than evidence, and that's partly my fault. I built that machine." The room went silent. Even the moderator looked stunned. "So maybe," Oprah continued, "it's time I help fix it." Jasmine leaned back slightly, studying her. "You know, that might be the most powerful thing you've said all evening." "Oh, I'm not done yet," Oprah smiled. "You accused me of not reading the fine print. Maybe I didn't. But maybe that's because people like me don't have easy access to that fine print. Maybe Washington doesn't explain itself well enough to the people it serves." "Fair," Jasmine conceded. "Politics isn't designed for transparency. It's designed for negotiation. But maybe if more public figures asked for the fine print, we'd have fewer viral misunderstandings." "Then maybe you should help teach us how to read it," Oprah said, leaning forward. "Maybe I already am," Jasmine replied. A long pause. The tension melted into mutual recognition. The moderator turned to the audience. This, he gestured at both women, is what accountability looks like. Two leaders challenging and listening at the same time. Applause filled the hall, genuine this time, not forced. Jasmine waited for the noise to settle before adding, "And for the record, I don't dislike you, Miss Winfrey. I grew up watching you. You inspired me to use my voice. But influence doesn't end where inspiration begins. It carries responsibility beyond intention." "I understand," Oprah said gently, "and I'll own my part in that. I've always said, when we know better, we do better." "Then tonight," Jasmine replied, "we both just learned something." The audience stood, applauding louder now, phones raised again, but this time the tone was different. It wasn't scandal, it was solidarity. Oprah glanced toward Jasmine and whispered into her mic, "You handled this well. Most would have come for blood." "That's not my style," Jasmine said with a small smile. "I came for truth." "Then you found it," Oprah said, smiling back. Backstage, producers were whispering furiously. "We need to cut to commercial," one said. "No," another replied. "Keep it rolling. This is history." A camera operator whispered, "They're actually listening to each other." When the applause quieted, Oprah turned toward the audience again. "Can I say one more thing?" she asked. The crowd murmured assent. "I've interviewed presidents, activists, and everyday heroes," she said. "But tonight reminded me of something I forgot. That real leadership doesn't fear correction, it invites it." She turned to Jasmine. "Thank you for that reminder." Jasmine inclined her head respectfully. "And thank you for not walking off the stage." Laughter rippled through the room. Even the moderator chuckled. Audience reactions trickled across the hall, snippets caught on mics. This is what democracy should sound like. Finally, accountability without chaos. "She just made Oprah think on camera. Wow." Others whispered, "I came for drama. I'm leaving with perspective." For the first time that evening, Oprah looked almost relieved. "Maybe we both needed this," she said softly. "Maybe America did too," Jasmine replied. They shook hands, a gesture both firm and warm, and the cameras caught it perfectly. A snapshot that would soon dominate headlines worldwide. Backstage, after they walked off stage, Oprah's longtime producer whispered, "That could have gone either way." "No," Oprah said quietly, adjusting her mic. "It went the way it needed to." She paused, then added, "She's tough, but she's right." Meanwhile, Jasmine sat in her green room, scrolling through early headlines already flooding social media. Congresswoman confronts icon. Oprah yields to facts. The night influence met accountability. Her chief of staff smiled. "You realize you just changed the entire tone of political discourse for the week." Jasmine chuckled. "Maybe for longer than that." That was when Oprah's assistant knocked softly on her dressing room door. "Ms. Winfrey would like a word," he said. Jasmine looked up, surprised but composed. "Send her in." Oprah entered. No cameras, no audience, just authenticity. "That was intense," Oprah said with a wry smile. "That's politics," Jasmine replied. "But I hope you know it wasn't personal." "I do," Oprah nodded. "And I meant what I said out there. Maybe it's time people like me stop talking about Washington and start learning from it." Jasmine smiled. "Then let's start with a conversation. No cameras, just truth." "Deal," Oprah said, extending her hand again. They shook, a quieter handshake than the one on stage, but somehow more meaningful. For a few seconds after the handshake, silence ruled the backstage corridor. The low hum of distant applause faded, replaced by the clatter of camera rigs and muffled voices. Then the first phone pinged, a push notification. Then another. Then a dozen. Every outlet from CNN to BuzzFeed had already blasted the headline. "Winfrey and Crockett face off live. Sparks fly at Policy Forum." Oprah exhaled, glancing at her phone as her team flooded in. "We're trending," her producer whispered. "Number one?" Oprah asked quietly. "Everywhere." She smiled faintly, not in triumph but in disbelief. "After all these years, I'm still breaking the internet," she murmured. "Just not how I planned." Within hours, every corner of the media universe had weighed in. Panel shows, podcasts, think pieces. Everyone had an opinion on the face-off between Jasmine Crockett and Oprah Winfrey. On MSNBC, one analyst called it the most authentic exchange on television in a decade. On Fox, another labeled it the moment celebrity culture met its match. Twitter, or X as it was now known, was a battlefield of hashtags and hot takes. One trending comment read, "Two queens, one truth, accountability." Another said, "When facts meet influence, receipts win." Her longtime friend and stylist, Andre, adjusted her coat while the room buzzed with tension. "You okay?" he asked softly. "I'm thinking," Oprah replied. "It's been years since someone challenged me like that, and she did it with facts, not attitude." Andre grinned. "Guess she watched your old interviews and learned from the best." Oprah laughed, shaking her head. "If she did, she graduated with honors." She turned toward the mirror, her reflection thoughtful. Maybe this is what evolution looks like, handing the mic to the next voice and letting her shake the table. Her producer entered, holding a phone. CBS Morning Show wants a comment, and The Atlantic's requesting an op-ed. Oprah smiled faintly. "Tell them I'll respond, but not with words, with action." Her communications director scrolled through the flood of messages. "Congresswoman, you've been invited to The View, CNN Primetime, and half the Sunday shows." "We'll choose one," Jasmine said. "Preferably the one that doesn't want to fight, just a conversation." Her aide raised an eyebrow. "That might narrow it down to none." Jasmine smirked. "Then we'll make one." She paused, thoughtful. "Get me the policy analysts from the Family Equity Foundation and the Center for Fiscal Reform. We're going to fact-check the bill line by line. If I'm going to be the face of accountability, I'd better stay 3 steps ahead of everyone." By sunrise, the story had become impossible to ignore. Clips from the event topped YouTube's trending list. Reaction videos flooded TikTok. Even late-night hosts joined in, some joking, others applauding. But beneath the noise, something rare was happening. People weren't arguing about who won. They were debating what truth should look like in the age of influence. Political strategist Marcus Johnson looked directly into the camera. "This wasn't a feud. It was a cultural reset. For once, we watched 2 women in power disagree, without chaos, without insults, and still end up teaching each other." His co-host nodded. "It's the kind of tension democracy needs, firm, factual, and fearless." Her phone vibrated with a call. Oprah. She hesitated, then answered. "Miss Winfrey?" "Jasmine," Oprah said warmly, "I know you're probably exhausted, but thank you." "For what?" "For reminding me why the truth matters more than the narrative." Jasmine smiled. "And thank you for proving that influence can listen." They both laughed softly, a sound that, if recorded, could have ended half the online arguments that day. "I'm flying home tonight," Oprah said. "But when things calm down, let's meet again, not on stage, somewhere quiet." "Name the place," Jasmine replied. "I'll bring the fine print." "I'll bring the coffee," Oprah said. The call ended with mutual laughter. For the first time in 24 hours, both women felt lighter. The next 48 hours were a whirlwind of coverage, praise, and reflection. But behind the media spectacle, something deeper had shifted. A silent recognition that truth, when spoken with calm conviction, could still cut through the loudest noise. At the National Policy Forum headquarters, organizers reviewed the playback of the event. One producer whispered, "We started this forum to discuss moral crises. Turns out, we just solved one." Another replied, "Or at least reminded people how to talk again." Later that evening, a college professor uploaded the entire unedited exchange to YouTube under the title, "The Night Influence Met Accountability, Full Dialogue." Within 12 hours, it hit 10 million views. Students dissected it in media ethics classes. Churches referenced it in sermons. And high school debate teams used it as a case study on rhetoric and restraint. The morning light spilled across the trees. Oprah sat with her journal, writing, "Legacy isn't what you say, it's who you let speak when you're done talking." She underlined it twice. Then she smiled, closing the notebook. Stacks of bills and binders cluttered her desk. Her staff entered with updates. "The revised draft of the Family Relief Act is out," her chief of staff said. "And they removed the corporate tax loopholes you exposed." Jasmine leaned back, letting that sink in. Sometimes, she said quietly, truth really does change policy. Her aide grinned. And apparently, it also breaks the internet. They both laughed. The world had already crowned its viral heroes, but neither woman cared about hashtags anymore. What mattered was what came next, and both of them knew it. That's when Oprah's team sent Jasmine an email, a simple proposal with a bold headline: "Let's teach America to fact-check." Attached was a draft outline for a joint initiative, bringing receipts, a free media literacy course, and the rest is the history you already know. Across the hall, Jasmine's staff were gathered around a single tablet, their faces lit by the glow of comment sections exploding in real time. "They're calling it the moment of truth," her aide said. "That's a first," Jasmine replied, half smiling. "Usually they call it the outburst." Her chief of staff looked up from his phone. "Cable networks are already cutting their schedules. Everyone wants you on air tonight." Jasmine shook her head. "Not tonight. Let the clip speak for itself. If I talk too soon, it'll look like strategy. This needs to breathe." It was graceful, but the power dynamic had already shifted. "Thank you, Ms. Winfrey," Jasmine replied. "Clarification is always welcome. So is accountability." The audience applauded, cautiously at first, then louder. In under 20 minutes, Jasmine Crockett had done what no one thought possible. She challenged one of the most trusted figures in America on her own stage and came out commanding the narrative. The discussion that followed was civil, balanced, even inspiring. But the world outside that hall had already moved beyond the conversation. Clips of the confrontation flooded every platform. Analysts called it a turning point in celebrity politics. Others simply called it the moment. By nightfall, Crockett receipts trended worldwide. Headlines blared. "Congresswoman flips the script on Oprah." Even political rivals found themselves agreeing on one thing: facts had finally beaten fame. But the story didn't end on stage. In the days that followed, something rare happened. America started talking, not about who won the argument, but about why it mattered. 3 days later, Oprah Winfrey posted a statement online. "Throughout my career, I've stood for truth and growth. My exchange with Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett reminded me that even with the best intentions, influence requires reflection. When we know better, we do better, and this is my moment to do better." It wasn't an apology, it was an evolution. And Jasmine responded with grace. "This was never about winning," she tweeted. "It was about honesty in public discourse. I respect Miss Winfrey's acknowledgement and her willingness to reflect." For a brief moment, the internet did something it rarely does. It paused to reflect, too. Influence, accountability, truth. Those words suddenly meant something again. A week later, both women made an unexpected joint announcement. They were launching a free online media literacy course designed to help Americans separate fact from narrative. Its title? Bringing Receipts: How to Verify Claims from Any Source. It went viral again, but this time for all the right reasons. At Harvard's Kennedy School 6 months later, Jasmine Crockett took the stage once more, delivering a keynote titled "Accountability in the Age of Influence." "We live in a world," she said, "where amplification often replaces understanding. But democracy demands something different: responsibility. Whether you have a seat in Congress or a seat on a talk show couch, the standard must be the same. Claims need evidence, and influence needs integrity." In the front row sat Oprah Winfrey, listening attentively. The cameras caught a subtle smile between the two women. Not rivalry, respect. What began as a clash had evolved into collaboration, and the world noticed. News outlets hailed it as the dialogue that reshaped the relationship between fame and facts. Debate teams used the moment as a case study in preparation and composure. And "Do you have the Crockett receipts for that?" became a pop culture phrase meaning, "Can you back that up?" In the end, it wasn't about who was louder or who was loved more. It was about who was right and who was ready. The takeaway was unmistakable. In an age of instant influence, truth still matters. Preparation still matters. And as Jasmine Crockett proved on that stage, courage backed by evidence will always outshine power backed by applause. If you found this breakdown insightful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the notification bell for more stories of power, truth, and the moments that change everything. Because here at Classroom, we bring you the side of politics the cameras don't always show, where facts fight influence and the truth always finds the light.